When Hamas initiated attacks on Israel on October 7th, President Joe Biden declared unwavering support for Israel. The U.S. condemnation of the Hamas attack was coupled with a commitment to provide Israel with the necessary resources to defend itself. The Pentagon dispatched 2 aircraft carrier strike groups to the eastern Mediterranean near Israel, aimed at deterring potential involvement by Iran or Hezbollah in the Israel-Hamas conflict. Additionally, the U.S. publicly expressed its intention to deploy more fighter jets to demonstrate its commitment to Israel. However, the situation is evolving rapidly. In light of recent developments in the conflict, there is mounting pressure on the U.S. government to urge Israel to consider a ceasefire. As Israeli forces continue to attack Gaza, more and more innocent people are being killed. Israel has admitted to targeting an ambulance outside Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City, the largest medical facility in the area. This attack, witnessed by many, resulted in the deaths of at least 15 people and left 50 others injured. Disturbing footage from the scene shows numerous injured individuals lying near the ambulance. The Israeli military's assault has also extended to schools, mosques, and additional hospitals in Gaza. Furthermore, Israel launched attacks on the Jabalia refugee camp, the largest of its kind in Gaza, resulting in the deaths of at least 50 Palestinians and leaving 150 wounded. The escalating violence has prompted people worldwide to demand a ceasefire, with an increasing flow of news and images through social media. In the past, when Hamas attackers killed 1,400 civilians in a series of horrifying attacks, politicians in the Western world expressed their shock and pledged support for Israel. However, as the Gaza conflict continues and Israeli forces have killed thousands of Palestinians, this political consensus has fractured. Interestingly, it's primarily left-leaning politicians in the West who are facing the most significant challenges related to this issue. In the United States, Joe Biden is feeling pressure from Muslim voters who view his strong support for Israel as a betrayal. In the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, who is poised to become the next Labour Prime Minister, is experiencing a severe test amid internal disputes within his party. Spain's Pedro Sánchez is working to retain power by forming a left-leaning coalition, while in the Netherlands, the conflict has disrupted the left-wing alliance's campaign ahead of an upcoming election later this month. Just last week, the United States found itself in a rather isolated position when it, along with Israel, had only 12 countries supporting them at the UN General Assembly in opposing a motion that called for a sustained humanitarian ceasefire to stop the ongoing hostilities. 1 hour after Israel had expanded its offensive in Gaza, a motion presented by Jordan was approved in New York with 120 votes in favor, 14 against, and 45 countries choosing to abstain. This outcome was striking because it highlighted the lack of widespread support for the world's most powerful nation. Even France, Spain, and the UK chose not to stand with the US in opposing the motion. Additionally, the divisions within the European Union, which had become apparent in recent weeks, were further exposed. The 27 member countries of the EU voted in 3 different ways, with the majority opting to abstain from taking a clear stance on the issue. The Israel-Palestine conflict's devastating impact on civilian lives has sent shockwaves around the world. What is equally troubling is the perceived double standard and hypocrisy displayed by many Western leaders and media outlets. While Western leaders have denounced Hamas's attacks on Israel, they have not similarly condemned Israel's indiscriminate attacks on Gaza. The fact that Israeli attacks have resulted in the deaths of numerous United Nations aid workers and over 20 journalists hasn't prompted significant reactions from these Western leaders. After Israel imposed a siege on the Gaza Strip, cutting off its water, food, fuel, and electricity supplies, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen faced scrutiny for her previous tweet. In that tweet, she criticized Russia for attacking civilian infrastructure, especially electricity, labeling it as war crimes. She wrote, "Cutting off men, women, and children from water, electricity, and heating as winter approaches amounts to acts of pure terror." This hypocrisy and double standard have ignited widespread anger among people worldwide. Around 850 European Union officials signed a letter to von der Leyen, challenging her commitment of unconditional support for Israel and urging her to emphasize Israel's compliance with international humanitarian law in its military operations. The United States' unwavering support for Israel in its conflict with Hamas has sparked a resurgence of anti-American sentiment in many Arab and Muslim communities. Just a few days ago, Arab leaders called for an immediate ceasefire in Israel's military offensive in Gaza, urging U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken to intervene with Israel. However, Blinken's response that an immediate halt would risk Hamas regrouping and attacking Israel has not been well received. The Israeli military's actions in Gaza, including airstrikes, a blockade, and a ground assault, have drawn international concern due to deteriorating humanitarian conditions. Food and medical services are in short supply, and civilian casualties are on the rise. Despite growing international calls for a ceasefire, both Israel and Washington have resisted these calls. The U.S. had proposed localized pauses in the fighting, an idea that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected after meeting with Blinken. Blinken also held meetings with foreign ministers from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Jordan, as well as Palestinian representatives in Amman. With the U.S. declining to call for an immediate ceasefire while the conflict continues, its reputation in the Arab world is facing a public relations crisis, and its credibility in the Middle East is diminishing rapidly. Moreover, the U.S.'s unconditional support for Israel is straining its diplomatic relationships in the Asia-Pacific region, particularly in Southeast Asia. In recent years, the U.S. has sought to expand its influence in Southeast Asia to compete with China. However, two significant countries in the region, Indonesia and Malaysia, are predominantly Muslim. Both of these nations have shown unwavering support for Palestine. Therefore, if the U.S. continues to staunchly support Israel, its relationships with countries in the Southeast Asia region could be adversely affected. Do you believe that the United States will eventually advocate for a ceasefire as the pressure continues to build? Feel free to share your thoughts and leave your comments below.